All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us in this evening to be able to learn more about the citywide affordable housing TIF program. For those who joined us a little later after my initial discussion when we started this information session at 5:30, yesterday we had our first session. So again, this is day two. Again, the same information that was discussed yesterday as far as the PowerPoint will be discussed in this presentation as well. Of course, some of the questions towards the end, which we do allow you all to participate in the Q&A section of the information session, those questions and answers will be different. But again, we want to let you all know that this will be recorded, and you also have access, which is already on DHCD's website, to retrieve yesterday's information session, which again will cover the same information that we will discuss. So again, thank you all for joining tonight. Just a couple of things I want to talk about before we go into our presentation. I mean, overall, since I've been here with DHCD and started several different grant programs, those that were brand new, those that's already been established, we've received, a really good interest from the public. But this program is something I've never seen before. In total tonight, I believe over 1,600 people registered for the information session. Now, just like yesterday, where we had over 1,000 registrants, about 400 or so participated. And today is looking like we're almost at 500 who's going to participate in this information session today. Just a little bit more information about this TIF program, which I'm sure you all, definitely heard about because you registered for this, that I just want to share, that will be discussed during this presentation. But it was a common question that came up several times during yesterday's information session was that, again, there's potentially 15 to 18 million in grant funds available to tackle the vacant housing issues that we have in the city of Baltimore. One thing that the City of Baltimore Department of Housing and Community Development does that I have not seen with other localities, toot our horn a little bit, is that we definitely make sure that we set aside funding for our emerging developers. Within this program, the Citywide Affordable TIF program, there will be a set aside amount of approximately $3 million for emerging developers because we know that some developers who are brand new, who have not completed large scale projects, will also have, excuse me, good projects in mind that they would like to look forward to turning into whether a home ownership opportunity or rental opportunity of a formerly vacant property. Again, there's another piece what we'll discuss, which is brand new for this program. Again, I haven't seen it with any of our other programs, and that's also giving legacy residents the opportunity to apply for funds. You may ask, what is a legacy resident? We will discuss that as well inside this NOFA, where we will go into detail, the WNOFO presentation, where we go into detail on what the legacy resident is. And definitely we want to encourage these legacy residents to participate in this program. Again, we know there are pillars within the city. Their families were pillars within the city. So we want to make sure that their family lineage, as well as their legacy, is still here with the city. A couple of key things that I want to mention to you all that's going to be very important is that the application deadline is October 3rd. And from yesterday's session, there were questions on why the application deadline was so close to the opening of the application, which is September 19th, when you can actually apply for the program. And that is due to the bond issuance needing to occur. You may ask what that is as well. There's a slide that's going to go into detail on what the bond issuance is, as well as what is a TIF, because I'm sure that's a question that may come up as well from you all in the public, of the over 500 people that's on this call who may not even know what a TIF is. So we want to be able to make sure that we have that information available for you all as well. Another thing that I want to just point out is that I know, and again, we encourage that there's going to be a lot of new developers or emerging developers, as well as our legacy residents who've never applied for any city grant funding programs. So again, you would apply to this for funding via a tool called Neighborly Software, which again we'll have a how-to segment of this information to go over that. And we'll give you a guide to be able to understand how to apply for funding via the Neighborly Software portal. And just a couple of additional program information that I also want to share about our other programs. that's in addition to this funding that again that I feel that may be helpful to you all for your projects is that the Community Catalyst Grant Program, NOFA, Notice of Funding Available, that application for capital funds for the CCG program expires October 3rd. So again, same day as this one. That's another funding opportunity. There's $2 million in capital funding through our CCG program. We also have our affordable housing community land trust through our affordable housing trust fund for home ownership that has an open NOFA as well. And also I want you all to, if you're not familiar with it, but to get familiar with it, is the Reframe Baltimore Reduction Strategy information. And some other future funding that I definitely want to share with you all is that in November or sometime in the fall, we have another affordable housing trust fund rental notice of funding available being launched. In the beginning of next calendar year, next year, we have another Community Catalyst Grant CCG capital NOFA being launched, as well as there is a possibility of an additional city affordable housing TIF program NOFO that will be launched upcoming next year. So again, we want to make sure that you all are aware of all these new opportunities because again, we know that, we wish there was unlimited funding to meet all your needs, but I just want to share with you about additional funding programs, outside of this program that you should also look into as possibilities to help serve you in your projects. And this last thing I want to mention, again, this is going to be very interactive. I have team members from DHCD who is on this call as well, who will be answering your questions in the chat throughout the presentation. So again, just please be patient as we respond to those questions that you all have. Again, we have almost 600 people here. So again, if any of your questions may not be answered, you will have the opportunity to have our email address available. So again, thank you all for joining us tonight. And with that, I will go over the agenda and then I'll pass the baton over to one of our team members with DHCD, Mary, who will go through the presentation. So with the agenda, again, welcome and introductions. Again, welcome to you all once again. Overview of the citywide affordable housing TIF program presentation, and what information session presentation. We will ask again, we will allow you all to understand what is a TIF. We will talk about important dates that you need to be mindful of related to this program. We'll talk about award terms. We'll talk about eligible and ineligible uses of these funds. And we'll also go into the application process, how to apply. Again, this is going to be very new for a lot of you all, this program. So again, we'll go into the how to apply process through our Neighborly software portal. And then we'll talk about what happens after you apply, which we'll talk about the threshold review side. And then also we'll talk about the required documents, which is going to be a very key piece that you all have information on in order to complete a well put together application. And then once an application is submitted and the next steps, once all that is done and threshold review is complete, then we're going to talk a little bit about the application scoring criteria. Then we're going to talk about the after awarding phase. And then we're going to talk about neighborly assistance. And then also at the end, like I mentioned earlier, we will open it up for you all to be able to ask us questions. But again, please be active in the chat. Again, I have team members here that will be able to answer your questions. And with that, again, enjoy the presentation. I thank you all for joining us on this evening, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it to my team member, Mary and Yancey, who's going to present this PowerPoint to you all. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome again. Tonight, we're going to go over the program overview. What is a tax increment financing or a TIF? A tax increment financing TIF legislation authorizes the city of Baltimore to sell bonds and borrow money for development projects. TIFs are intended to provide additional city revenue by increasing the property tax base and attracting new residents. The city plans to sell bonds that revenue pays for new development, typically public infrastructure, parks, and open spaces. The city goal is to sell bonds by the end of the calendar year so money can be available to provide reimbursement for these projects. What is the citywide affordable housing TIF? A tax increment financing district was established in 2024 by ordinance 24-443 of the mayor and city council of Baltimore to assist in redeveloping vacant properties for home ownership or rental to be occupied by households earning no more than 115% of the area median income, or AMI, for a family size determined by HUD. For a family household of four, it is approximately $149,845. And we do have those limits determined by HUD in our NOFO. The city intends to issue bonds secured by property taxes generated in the TIF district. Proceeds of those bonds will be used to fund the grant program. The affordable housing TIF grants are intended to foster equitable neighborhood development, reduce the appraisal gap when the appraised value is less than the sales price, and expand the resources for community development, provide opportunities for small, emerging, women and minority-owned businesses, support sustainable and healthy communities here in Baltimore, grow the city's population, and increase the city's tax base. Through this affordable housing TIF notice of funding opportunity, or what we will call the NOFO, the Baltimore City Department of Housing and Community Development intends to make available approximately 15 to 18 million in TIF grants to support the redevelopment of vacant residential buildings for affordable home ownership and rental that are in the TIF district. 3 million, as Paul mentioned, is going to be set aside for potential funds for small and emerging grants. The awarding of grants and payments of grant funds and the amount of available grant funds for this program is conditioned upon the successful issuance of the city. You may ask,
Pardon
who can
me,
apply?
Mary, pardon me, this is Tammy. I think your internet connection is weak and you're chopping up a bit. Is there any way you can strengthen that connection, or Paul, can you have someone handle this or help with this?
Yeah, here I go. I can go ahead and do it. So Mary, if everyone can hear me clearly, I can go through it. Yes, Mary, you were a little choppy. We want to make sure that, your information that you're putting out there is clear to the public.
Yeah.
Um, so try to fix your internet connection. I can take it over from here, and then I'll check with you shortly in the middle of the presentation to see if you're all good to go.
Oh,
All right. And the slide that I see is how to check property is TIF eligible. Is that where you left off at, Mary?
no, we were talking about who's eligible to apply.
All right. So I'll go through that, and then again, this bit, yep. All right. So again, apologies for you all. No fault on Mary's end. We are definitely in the storm today and some wind, so it's probably the main reason. But we want to make sure that you all are getting a clear presentation. So who can apply? For-profit development organizations, nonprofits, community development corporations, also known as CDCs, neighborhood groups, merchants associations, and 50 and others with 501c3, 501c6 status, normally nonprofits, or fiscal sponsorship and partnerships. Again, as I mentioned earlier, legacy residents have the opportunity to apply for the program. Residents in TIF districts will discuss shortly in the upcoming slide on how you identify where something is in the TIF district. And again, small and emerging developers. And then what kind of projects are eligible? TIF funds assist in redeveloping vacant properties in the TIF district for home ownership and or rental to be occupied by households whose incomes do not exceed 115% of the area median income. And then we also have a link here. Check if your property is listed at Baltimore Affordable Housing TIF. Next slide. All right. So one of the questions that came up yesterday during the information session from many of you in the public was, how do you see if your property is TIF eligible? And Alice Cook, you have to wait to the end towards toward the end before we answer any questions. Again, everyone, please be patient with your questions as far as raising hands until the end of the presentation. How to check if to check property is TIF eligible. Applicants can confirm if property is TIF eligible by using searchable database, TIF property search database. The link is included in the NOFA, and what I have on the screen here is a screenshot of a property located at off Fulton Avenue that I put into the TIF database search, and it allowed me to come up with whether or not this property is TIF eligible or not. So again, for those who are interested to see if a property that they're interested in is TIF eligible, one of the first indications if it's TIF eligible is you'll see these green dots once you are in the TIF property search database. And once you click on the green dot that's on top of a property, on the right-hand side, it will provide the block and lot number, the address, and it will have the statement, this property is eligible for TIF funds. And again, additional information about the council district and neighborhood as well. So again, that's will be a test that you all will be able to determine if a property is TIF eligible. And it's important that you would know this information because we're going to require it as well that you provide proof that your property is in a TIF district by sharing a similar screenshot to what you see here on the screen. Next slide, please. Important dates. Again, I want to put an emphasis on this slide because again, a lot of this is moving at a very fast pace. We know that we made the public aware that the application was available for viewing September 18th or 8th on DHCD's website, but the actual application itself via the Neighborly Software Portal opened September 19th. So again, anyone who's interested in actually applying for the TIF program now, the application will not be available until September 19th once it goes on the Neighborly portal. Again, we're hosting session number 2. Yesterday, we held the information session number 1. The deadline to submit written questions is September 17th. So again, if you have any other questions after this, you will need to submit your questions to ahtif@baltimorecity.gov. And your responses will be hopefully posted to the questions by September 19th, 2025. And as far as the submission deadline date, which I mentioned earlier, is in relation to the bond issuance is October 3rd, same day as our community catalyst grant NOFA. So please don't get those programs mixed up. And then the anticipated notification of awarding is around early November to middle November, but we have November 6th through November 17th, but it could be within the middle of that month. Again, the Neighborly portal is not available yet for this program, but once it is available, you'll be able to apply online, and there will be a link on DHCD's website. Next slide. Eligible applicants. As I sit here through this presentation, I've been seeing a lot of different questions about who's eligible. And these couple of slides that's going to come up will discuss that question. So eligible applicants, program, city award properties executed disposition agreements, aka LDAs. So many people have already have LDAs with the city. They will be eligible applicants for this program. Again, these eligible applicants who receive these LDAs include organization entities that have received an award letter from DHCD to redevelop specific properties, have an executed LDA that's in good standing with our department, can execute an LDA within 45 days of receiving an award letter, and close on the city-owned properties within 120 days from executing an LDA. Eligible properties must be located in citywide affordable TIF districts, which we displayed earlier in the database tool. Properties include in award letter and or amended into the LDA. Properties included on the state's FY26 BVRI list. Next slide, please. All right. The second group of eligible applicants is our folks who are participants of the developer registry. Again, who are these folks? Applicants who have been selected to participate in DACD's developer registry. For those who did not receive notification from DACD that you are a participant of the developer registry, that would not apply to you, unfortunately. But again, in an upcoming slide, we will discuss opportunity for those who don't have an the LDA or part of the developer registry on how they can participate in this program. For developer registry eligible properties, city-owned properties in an impact investment area, or site control of private properties that are in a TIF district. This can include properties with open permits or properties included on the state's BVRI FY26 award list. Next slide, please. And the other additional applicants, again, which will most likely or possibly be majority of those on this call, just based on the interest that we received, is our general interest applicants. Who are these people? Who are those general interest applicants? Who's eligible? So again, that includes for-profit and nonprofit developers, organizations that partner with the developer, individuals who are currently purchasing a property that's included in the TIF district, small and emerging developers, entities slash individuals who are interested in rehabbing vacant properties, individuals who live in TIF districts who are interested in rehabbing an eligible vacant property for the occupancy of a family member, or as a rental to generate income, so as long as the occupant's income does not exceed 115% of the area median income, also known as AMI. And eligible properties, properties owned properties privately owned properties or properties with site control that's in a TIF district. This can include properties in TIF district with open permit. Next slide, please. And for some, and I'm gonna pause for a second. For someone who's writing on this PowerPoint presentation, please don't do that. I don't want anyone to be thrown off on this some of the information that we're showing. I want everything to be legible as we go through this because it's a lot of information to cover. I want to make sure everything's legible for our participants. TIF, so again, TIF grant award amounts and terms. There's no maximum amount of funds or number of property rental units. So again, that was a question that came up, is what's the maximum amount you can request? There is no maximum amount, but again, DACD will consider all applications for funding that has been successfully submitted. Funds are necessary to fill appraisal gaps, demonstration of source of funds. You're required to another note is awarded funds must be spent and the use of occupancy permit obtained within 12 months, a 12-month period from the date of executing a grant agreement with the BOE, aka the Board of Estimates, and must comply with all city insurance requirements, which again will be in the grant agreement if awarded funds. Next slide. TIF grant site control. So in order to participate in this program, well, not in order to participate, but in order to successfully complete an application, all applicants must provide some proof of site control. TIF funds cannot be used to acquire city-owned property, nor can improvements be made until after title transfers. Acceptable forms of site control, depending on project type, may include privately owned property, non-city owned rental, sub-recipient projects, as well as city-owned properties, which again in this case would be an approved LDA. Applicants must demonstrate feasible site control at the time of application, and the ability to take title within 12 months of executing a fund agreement, which DACD, Department of Housing and Community Development, will confirm. And one thing I want to note here as well, please note, DACD cannot provide project-specific recommendations on how applicants should establish site control for their submission. Next slide. TIF eligible uses. Hard construction costs. Again, we have a list of all the different hard construction costs that can go into the TIF eligible uses. Again, that includes demolition, site improvements, construction, rehab of vacant units, building structure or shell, foundation, framing, floor and roof structure, ceiling, alarm system, among a host of other things, which again will be outlined in our notice of funding of opportunity, the NOFO, as well as interior and exterior finishings, finishes, floor covering, stationary equipment, and other building fixed equipment may be subject to additional reviews and potentially determined to be eligible. Next slide. Okay, the application process. We'll in this section we'll discuss the application process, but before we go into that, I want to make sure to see if my colleague Mary is able to have a better reception throughout the presentation. Mary, can you unmute to see if things improved on your end?
I don't think it has. I think the storm
Okay.
is,
Okay, well, just continue to work the PowerPoint for me and I'll go through the material.
okay, thank you, Paul.
hmm Okay, next slide. I still just see application process on my screen. All right. So, yesterday during our presentation, we did have a how-to video on how to apply for the Neighborly software. But again, that video did not work, and it's about 10 minutes long. So if you all are interested in being able to actually watch the video, you will have access to this PowerPoint presentation. So all you need to do is click on the link, and one of our colleagues who works with us, who at DHCD, completed a whole video on a how-to guide on how to complete the application via Neighborly. And then also we developed a scribe how to apply document as well, where if you click on this link that we provided, would allow you the opportunity to look at the scribe presentation on how to apply for a Neighborly application for this NOFA. So again, the presentation from yesterday is already available. So again, if you need these links, please feel free to be able to check those out so you can have a good understanding on how to apply for Neighborly. Because again, I know it's going to be the first time for several of you who are on this call. But again, we want to definitely share that resource with you all. Next slide. How to apply. To access the applicant portal, you will need to register your account and sign in and submit your application through Neighborly. So again, with the Neighborly portal, you have to submit an account first before you actually apply for one of our open NOFAs. The link that we provide to Neighborly, it provides you a list of all the available programs within DHCD that you can apply for. Again, this will be our affordable housing TIF program that you would apply for, which will be the only program that's related to this program that's named TIF that will be available. But again, that application opens on September 19th, this Friday. So again, if you was to set up an account now, Neighborly, you won't see that. You will see our Community Catalyst Grant Program as well as our Affordable Housing Trust Fund Community Land Trust NOFA, but not this one. But if you're experiencing technical difficulties with the portal via Neighborly, please send us an email that we provided here or info@neighborlysoftware.com. One thing I want to mention about Neighborly, because the application is opening on Friday, Neighborly does not work on the weekends, and neither does DHCD. So some of your questions that you may have about the application portal over the weekend, DHCD, if it's sent to this trust fund email address, or if you send an email to the Neighborly software address, you most likely won't receive a response until the upcoming business day the following week, which would be September 22nd. A completed application, including all requested documents, must be submitted no later than October 3rd, 2025 at 5 p.m. So again, we don't want to have a rush of everyone trying to submit an application all at the same time, because one or two things will happen. It will crash the Neighborly software system, and then you won't be able to successfully submit an application by the deadline. If you are experiencing issues at the time of deadline, if you're submitting at that point, let us know immediately, and we may consider the application if you provided us information that you experienced technical issues at the time before the application deadline. But another keynote I want to mention is that late submissions will not be accepted. So if you do submit an application by October 4th, which most likely won't be possible because we lock them right after the deadline, but if you was to do it, like say at 6 o'clock, and Neighborly, waits a little later within the evening to close the application, it will not be accepted because Neighborly timestamps each application that comes to them. Next slide. Okay, once the application is submitted, one of the questions may be, okay, what's the next steps? So here's we're going to go over the next steps of the application process once the application is actually submitted. So again, for folks who submit an application ahead October 3rd before 5 p.m., we will discuss the next steps in that phase of the application process. That we'll discuss the threshold review, the project readiness review, application reviews, scoring, as well as the housing commissioner information about who determines the awards after scoring and all that if applicable. Scroll a little bit more. I can't see the full slide yet. All right, there we go. Application review. So again, part of this application process, there will be a threshold review criteria. That's why it's very important that you submit all the documents that are required as part of the application and other documents that are not required but is applicable to you and that you have available. Threshold review is an administrative check to confirm that a submitted application is complete and that all required documentation has been submitted. To be eligible for scoring, for applicants that will be scored based on the applicant type, applicants must submit all required documents in the NOFO based on application type, as I mentioned. As part of the threshold review, each application will be screened for completeness and accuracy. These two bullets I want you all to really look into is because it's very important. If there are three or fewer, especially for our newer applicants, if there are three or fewer required documents are missing, incorrect, or incomplete, applicants will be given a limited opportunity to cure. What the cure mean? DHCD will reach out to you, say, hey, these documents are missing from your application that was submitted. Please provide these documents within a certain amount of days. You'll receive notification about that directly. But another thing I'm going to note, if four or more required documents are missing, incorrect, or incomplete, the application will be considered ineligible and will not move forward for scoring or award consideration, and no opportunity to cure will be provided. Next slide. Required documents and narrative. Here we have this a snapshot of the required documents, but again, the application will go into even further detail on what the requirement documents are, as well as how you access them. Some of you may ask, okay, I don't have these required documents available, but again, there's going to be areas of the application where you can either input this information in or download the documents such as the project budget. So for the application, you will need to submit the information of the project description, application property, information form, which again on the application is actually just a list that you would need to input on there. Evidence of site control, project schedule, which is a downloadable form, project budget, which is a downloadable form that will be in the application. You will need to provide your project sources, financial statements for those that are applicable. Again, the application is very interactive. It'll let you know which applicants will need to provide that information, as well as the development team experience. You need to provide details on that. And if there are any partnerships that you are mentioning, like a fiscal partner, you will have the opportunity to describe that fiscal agent partner via MOU or details about that partnership. Next slide. Application scoring criteria. Next slide. Here we'll discuss the application scoring criteria, which again, will let you know which applicants apply, which scoring applies to, and who doesn't. Okay, so here's the rubric where we talk about the actual application scoring. So for applicants that will be scored, here's the scoring guide for that. So again, financing and spendability, 40 points, scheduling, 25 points, applicant capacity, 25 points, and site control, 10 points with a total of 100 points. Next slide, please. Application scoring, who will be scored? And that's a big question from a lot of you. I've seen it bounce in the chat. So again, we want to make sure that we're answering these things for you, so that can kind of allow you to just go ahead and just move forward with the application. Applications that will be scored based on application/funding request type. Who would not be scored? Funding requests that are part of a LDA or the developer registry will be evaluated based on meeting the threshold requirements. Again, what is threshold requirements? Again, there's required documents that you need to submit within your application. Once you submit an application at the deadline, we will review those documents to ensure that all the required documents are there. But again, for those fundings with as part of the LDA or developer registry, you will not be scored. Applications submitted by our legacy residents who identify on the application that they're a legacy resident living within the TIF district will be evaluated for threshold requirements. So again, there's still going to be required documents that our legacy residents who are applying as for these funds will still need to would provide, but will not be subject to scoring. Who will be scored? Applicants excuse me, application requesting funds for privately owned properties will be evaluated for threshold requirements and will be scored. Again, those applicants will still be required to submit all threshold documents. Will still have the opportunity to submit to cure an application if documentation is missing. But in the previous slide, when I went over the scoring guideline, those applicants will be subject to that scoring guideline. Next slide, please. Sorry, my mouth's getting dry. That's why I'm drinking while I'm going on. But financing, so application scoring. So here we're going to go into a little bit detail on just the overall, like what we look at when we're looking at certain areas of the scoring guide. So when it comes to financing and ability to spend TIF funds, maximum amount 40 points. Here are some of the bullets that we look into. Like scoring, within the application, you can provide your executed letters of commitment, award letters, evidence of personal funds, grant agreements and loan agreements must be executed and funds available by the time a grant agreement will be executed. And some of the other criteria we look at, applicants using personal funds, that was a question that came up yesterday, will be required to provide evidence of availability of funds no more than 30 days before a grant agreement with the city is executed. So again, you have to be awarded first before we ask for that information. And budgets must clearly demonstrate that grant funds will only be spent on eligible items. The applicants must have sufficient financing to cover non-grant funding costs, and that grants will be spent and can reimburse in accordance with program requirements. Again, within a budget that's going to be attached to the application, you will need to include your whole budget of the project as well as your sources that will that will calculate to the total cost of your project. Next slide. All right. Scheduling. So another key piece of the overall NOFO that we'll be looking at and that you have to provide is the completion of a project schedule. The project schedule need to clearly indicate benchmarks such as land and finance closing, executing of grant agreement within city, anticipated building permit approval, construction start date, issuance of use and occupancy permits, also known as UNOs, as well as occupancy. We would look at whether or not the schedule is realistic so that construction can be completed and the use of occupancy permit be issued within no later than 12 months from the date of a grant agreement with the city is executed. Again, you can possibly receive up to 25 points for that for applicants that this will apply to. Scoring will be based on feasibility of completing a project within 12 months of executing a grant agreement, and applicants is available to undertake the project, site control is achievable, and that the project can be completed and a use of occupancy permit can be attained within 12 months. Sort of what I mentioned above. Next slide. Applicant capacity. Again, one thing I mentioned early on is that we definitely want to encourage those who are new to development, our emerging folks, our legacy residents to participate in this program. For those applicants for our legacy folks, again, you won't be scored. For some of our newer emerging developers, your applications will be scored. But again, we don't want to discourage you from this opportunity. But within our scoring guideline, there's a maximum of 25 points where we look at the actual applicant capacity to complete the project. So we look at things such as your project description. You must be able to demonstrate that you have the expertise, staff, partners, consultants, and contractors to complete the proposed projects and attain the UNO within 12 months of executing the grant agreement. Um, scoring scoring will be based either on prior experience and readiness to proceed, complete team members' experience in renovating vacant and single family residential properties. So within that, please be as detailed as possible about some of these areas that you have experience in, because again, you may look at it as limited, but again, we want you to be able to really dive deep into your overall experience, whether you completed one project before or 100. Just make sure that you're documenting that information in the response in the application. Next slide. Site control. Now, this is the big one. There's a lot of questions that came up yesterday about site control. And again, that's going to be a very important piece of this application as well. It may not be big here on a scoring standpoint, but it's going to be very important as far as your application along with the other items that we just discussed throughout. So applicants requesting funds for privately owned properties must be able to provide proof of ownership or a purchase agreement that clearly indicates a closing date. If the purchase agreement includes conditions that are contingent on closing, or if the closing date has been extended, applicant should include an explanation why closing has been extended and the status of any contingency items. Again, scoring will be based on demonstrated ability to have title to a property no later than 30 days from executing a grant agreement within the city. So again, executing a grant agreement is in no relation to 30 days after awarding. It's the executing of a grant agreement. But again, we're looking at site control as one of the important factors when we're scoring the application for those applicants that scoring does apply to. Next slide. All right. So once everything is all said and done, you submitted application, you met threshold, you got your applicant score for those who did apply, or for those who don't apply, you met the threshold review process, you submitted all your documents, things look good. You may ask, okay, what's the next steps? And again, we want to discuss after awarding the reimbursement process. Again, many of you want to say, okay, I have this great project, I'm willing to, spend my funds on there, but I've been awarded for the TIF. But I want to know is that, okay, what is the reimbursement process for me to get my money? So awardees will be notified by DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development, if TIF funds are awarded. In our normal process of our NOFAs and NOFOs, we send a letter directly to awardee informing them that, hey, you've been awarded funds. We may or may not have an award ceremony like we do for our programs for those who are familiar with that. But again, you will be notified directly via DHCD that TIF funds have been awarded for your project once all is said and done throughout the application, after the application process and the review process. TIF funds are provided on a reimbursement basis. So again, for some of you who are familiar with our other programs, we have the opportunity to allow you to receive like an advance, but unfortunately through the TIF program, we don't allow that. All funds must be provided on a reimbursement basis. Another important piece on bullet 3, grantees need to have funds to cover costs and will be reimbursed, for those eligible costs. So again, as you get down the process for projects that are awarded, once you're ready to start submitting cost, we have to inform you that you will be reimbursed only for the eligible cost. And again, once you have your grant manager, because again, every project is awarded, you have a grant manager, your grant manager will be able to assist you throughout that process. To be reimbursed, grantees will complete a requisition form provided by city DHCD staff. Again, all this is after the awarding of the project and you being you as awardees providing that information to us. Grantees will receive payment after DHCD has provided completion of improvements and certification from a third-party inspector, and remaining funds will be provided once grantee provides UNO, use and occupancy permit, and sales and or occupancy of rental units and proof of income. Next slide. Again, we almost done, y'all. I know y'all might be tired of my voice, but we almost done. Just want to make sure y'all get all the information that you need. After awarding, reporting and compliance requirements. So like all our grants within DHCD, we do have reporting requirements that all our awardees must meet. Well, awardees turned grantees must meet. So after awarding, grantees will be required to provide DHCD with quarterly reports. Again, more detail is to come on that, but some things that you should expect is as a grantee to provide reports. It may include detailed information about project status that you need to provide, project challenges, because again, DHCD, we always want to know about different project challenges that you may face because there may be additional funding for you. There may be some TA to provide to you as well, especially for our emerging groups, as well as our legacy folks, and other project related information. Grantees will submit reports via the Neighborly software portal. So again, we not only just use Neighborly for our payment requests, our applications, but we also use the Neighborly portal for grantees to submit reports. It's a great tool that we use that allows us to track who owes us reports and allows us to respond to them as well, and allows you as grantees to submit them. Reports will be required until the expiration and closeout of the grant agreement. And also, DHCD will confirm that households or rental income of participants does not exceed 115% of the area median income at the time of sale or rent. Next slide, please. And again, one thing I want to point out about that bullet is that I had a question. We had a question yesterday that mentioned, do I have to be at 115% of the area median income? No, you can provide rents lower than that, or sell properties lower than those AMI levels, but that's the maximum. Again, neighborly assistance. Again, we talked about neighborly several times during this presentation. Again, that's our go-to tool for applications, payment requests, reports. Um, Neighborly has been great partners with us, but throughout this process, when you're completing the application, if you run into a technical issue, you can definitely let us know. But again, if it's technical related to Neighborly, you'll need to reach out to Neighborly directly to provide for them to provide you with assistance. And their information is info@neighborlysoftware.com. Next slide. All right. Question and answers.
Hey, Paul,
Again,
um,
yep.
before you go to questions, let me ask you to address one thing that came up multiple times in the chat.
Mhm.
People are asking for a definition of legacy resident or more insight into how legacy residents are identified. Can you speak to that before you go to questions? Because I didn't see any of your people respond to that in the chat.
Yeah, and someone named Bobby has his hand raised. Bobby, unfortunately, we can't respond to you just yet. Tammy, is there a way that one of my team members what they could possibly do from the note? Maybe I can do it because it's not sharing my screen. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, I just wanted you to speak to it before you took the flood of hands that I expect or other questions, because that was asked like 6 or 7 times in the chat already.
Yeah, most definitely. So what I'm going to do for those in the chat, I'm going to do two things. Drop the NOFA in the chat, but then also go to the section of the NOFA that describes that, which I'll share that information to you all on what is a legacy resident. And again, there's other members of DHCD who can provide support on that also. But let me, all right, take credit.
Paul, you trying to copy the NoFo? Is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah, well, I put the PDF in the message,
Yeah, it's not
just in case
coming up.
people, yep, just
We
so
need
they
a
can
link.
know.
We need the link for it's not coming up.
Oh, the link, okay.
Yeah. Let me see if I can get it.
Yeah, if you can do that for me, that'd be great. Um, as far as the legacy residents, I know there's Stacy Free from DHCD on this call. She maybe can go in more detail on it. Again, I just don't have that information available to go in that much detail just yet on the legacy residents. But again, Stacy, are you available to answer that question? since it's one of the popular ones?
Yep, sure. So good evening, everybody. I'm Stacy Freed with the Department of Housing and Community Development. Generally, we mean legacy residents to mean somebody that has lived in their community for a long time. It could be 10 years, it could be a little bit more, it could be a little bit less. It's somebody who is a generational member of a community. So you've lived in a neighborhood, your family's lived in a neighborhood, your grandparents have lived in a neighborhood. When we post questions and answers on our website on the 19th, we'll try and provide a little bit more clarity, but we don't want it to be so specific that it becomes very rigid and we inadvertently exclude, potential applicants that might qualify.
All right. Thank you, Stacy. And Tammy, there's a couple of additional slides I just want to go through before we close out. As far as, again, we're still going to do the Q&A, but there's a couple of things I just want to kind of go through the presentation. And Nancy Fisher, I see your question about can't hear. That may be your speakers or something. But again, thank you all. Again, key things I just want to mention. Please submit your written questions to the email address that's listed here, ahtif@baltimorecity.gov. If you have questions, also visit DHCD Affordable Housing TIF webpage for more information. There you'll find yesterday's presentation. You'll find a link to the PowerPoint. You'll find the NOFO. And then also, once it's live, you'll find a link to the Neighborly software application for DHCD. Next slide. All right, great. So with that, again, thank you all for attending the presentation. Now is the time for you all to, for us to allow you all to go off mute to be able to answer questions. Again, unfortunately, the camera we would not be allowed to allow you to open your camera, but we will unmute you if you have questions. So the first hand I see is Bobby B. Bobby had his hand raised several times throughout. So Bobby B, I'm getting ready to unmute you for you to be able to answer your question. So please unmute.
Hey, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey, so I have a question. I've developed a ton of properties in Baltimore City. What are like the key incentives for somebody like me to move my operations from maybe like Montgomery County and to develop properties in Baltimore City and to come back? And how do you guys, I mean, do you guys do funding on like an appraisal shortage or like how does it work?
For this program or just any of our other general programs that we offer funding
For
for
this one
developers?
specifically. Yeah, for this one.
Yeah, so for this one, I mean, first, the most important piece is that your project must be in the city of Baltimore. I know you mentioned Montgomery County. That's the only reason I'm mentioning that.
Right.
So again, if you're a developer who has properties, I think you mentioned already in Baltimore, again,
Mhm.
that's great. You can look up the affordable using the database tool for the TIF program to just determine whether or not the property that you may be interested in actually falls in the TIF district. So check that out as well. And as far as just this program, as far as this any funding gap providing, again, this program will allow you to be able to apply for funding gap opportunities. Again, one of the most important things that you need to do in your application is describe what that funding gap is in your application, as well as provide detail of all the sources just to confirm your funding gap that's available to see if what your overall need is for the affordable housing TIF funds. Did I answer your question?
Can I
Yeah,
add one thing, Paul?
yeah, go ahead.
So, hi, sir. One reason you want to look at this program, this is your chance to get in on the ground level of the first time this kind of TIF and this kind of financing is being offered in the country.
I
This
see.
is this is really groundbreaking. This was, we've taken a traditional TIF model and we've turned it upside down and on its head. This is your chance to come in at the ground level and help us build a new model.
So I'd like to like maybe incorporate some numbers just to follow up. It's my same question, but just to follow up. The typical row homes that we would buy, let's say the purchase price is 100,000. each row home, we're dropping at least a minimum of 150. It depends on the condition, but on average, so now we're all in at 250. That's not including transfer cost, holding costs, financing
Right.
costs, disposition cost. We're buying points. There's a tremendous amount of costs associated with it. So let's say all in, I'm at 280. Financially, like for me, for somebody that can build, we could easily do 60 to 70 projects yearly in Baltimore City. But financially, it just doesn't make sense for me to do that. I mean, I could guarantee I'd lose money on every single project just because the ARV isn't there, the demand, we just didn't see it. So, I mean, but if you guys are telling me like, hey, Bobby, sell this house for example, 100,000 to help the community out, help people get into housing, I'm more than happy to do that if the numbers make sense. And am I going the right direction?
Yes,
Very good.
you can, one of the purposes of this funding source is to help fill the appraisal gap, which is exactly what you just described.
Okay. Could you give me your email address? I'd love to set up a meeting with you guys potentially, and maybe we could have a partnership and see how we could even participate and help. I'm happy to move maybe like half of my crew to Baltimore City, and we could have a good partnership going on.
But Bobby, I can drop my email in the chat.
Perfect.
Again, we can't answer any application related questions like as far as just overall like how to, is this application eligible? You would need to really apply first before you would need to apply first and actually submit an application before we do that. We can't answer application specific questions for you, or project specific questions for you. So just wanted to just make sure that you're aware of that.
Understood. Thank you guys so much.
And Bobby, drop your email as well. I see some people asking for your email in the chat.
Yeah, no, I see that too. Thank you guys for everything. I really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Rashad, I'm getting ready to unmute you, or you can unmute yourself, please. Rashad Henderson.
How you doing, sir?
Pretty good.
All right. So my question, simple question. I'm just trying to figure out if how much cash on hand is needed. So basically, if I need to qualify for 150 in TIF funds, typically with hard money, I can have $40,000 and get the job done because I'm going to be reimbursed in $30,000 increments. So I'm trying to say, hey, if I showed you, say, $50,000 on my application, is that suffice? Or they're going to be saying, oh, I want to see 150 because you're saying you want 150. But if you guys are reimbursing me as I do the project, in turn, I don't need 150. I only need 50 or 40 because as I do the work, you guys are inspecting the work and then you're sending me a reimbursement. And that's typically how hard money works. You don't have to have, if you had the money, you wouldn't be borrowing it. So you don't have to have the whole money for the project. You just need money to do the different work for the different benchmarks. So I'm just trying to see if my application only had $50,000 cash, but I'm saying I need 150 for TIF. I just want to see if I'm going to be approved or disapproved before I put
Yeah.
it in.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Henderson, for your question. So yeah, with the application, you will be required to submit a development budget along with detailed plans on how you plan to fund the project. So in that same application, for this application, you need to provide details on what you're asking for this. So again, as far as funding, so again, the completion of a project budget needs to be there. So again, I'll just use a very simple number. So if your total project costs $200,000 and you're asking for say $50,000, there needs to be additional information on where the other financing sources are coming from that will financially allow you to be able to complete the project. Because again, any project that we fund, we want to ensure that these projects will move forward towards completion. But again, one thing I just want to know, inform you of, because several of our developers who we do provide project funding to for active projects through other programs, they have hard money lending loan lenders as well, and they still move forward the projects. But again, it's still on reimbursement process, a reimbursement basis.
Right. So let me just ask you. So I can't ask you for the whole 150. Like in theory, can I say I want 150 and I need 150, even though I have funds to front the project and get it done? I'm just saying, can I ask you for the whole 150 if
No,
that's what I need?
DHCD, and again, there's other members of DHCD who can follow up with this if there needs to be additional details. DHCD will not fund the total cost of a project.
Okay, that's good to know.
This
So,
program. Yep.
okay. All right. So now if I sell the house, like I have like 3 properties that qualify for this program. So, and I know all of them won't go through. So that's why I didn't want to, you know what I mean? I don't want to put in 3 applications when only one is going to go through. So if one of my properties is on there and it's about to be complete, I have an LDA with Baltimore City. If I say I'm selling it for like it's worth 500, but if I could only sell it for 400, could I put in an application and say, hey, I could only sell this because of the appraisal gap. Can I just request the 100,000 that I'm shorted, even though, I'm selling it for 4, even though I can't get the 5 that is, worth.
I mean, that could be a possibility when we review the application. But another thing I just want to make sure that you consider is the AMI requirement of 115. I know you're just using like a hypothetical situation, but again, you got to remember that 115% AMI requirement as well. But again, this, as far as your gap related question, again, DHCD will look at each application to determine, based on what amount of funding that the applicant is requesting in comparison to total budget cost. That we'll look at it and determine, whether or not this project is eligible to move forward with the application. So what I would recommend for you to do, Mr. Henderson, just submit an application. And then once we receive it, we'll review it.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. Sharon Tolson, I'm getting ready to unmute you, or you can unmute yourself. Sharon. Sharon, are you there? Give you another second or so. Now I'm gonna move over to Tiffany Green.
It just unmuted. Can you hear
There
me?
you go. Yep, I can hear you, Sharon.
Hey, so I'm sorry, it just popped up for me to unmute. So my question, and I need to ask this in full. So from everything that I heard, it sounds like to me that we need to show 100% on how how we're going to plan and to fund this, get the project. If it's not purchased or under contract, get it under contract, get it complete, and then you guys are reimbursing us. Is that right? Because I heard somebody just say that you would be reimbursing as they do with a typical hard lending, which I understand that because there are milestones that you have to meet before they pay out. But I didn't hear that in your presentation, so I want clarity on that.
Yeah,
Are
so
we?
again,
Mm-hmm.
go ahead, Sharon.
I was just saying, it sounded to me like we are expected to complete this project and then you guys are reimbursing, but correct me if I heard that wrong.
Yeah, so the application outlines certain benchmarks in order to receive your funding request. Again, when we're looking at applications, again, we can't answer project specific questions here, but when we're looking at applications once they are submitted, one of the key things we're going to look at is just the overall project readiness. So again, we're going to
Mm-hmm.
look at those things like what funding you have available, or do you have the funding available to be able to submit this project? Because we want to make sure that if you are given these funds, you'll be able to complete it. So again, things such as the sources, financial sources will be looked at. Throughout um, through this, I can't say that you'll need to show 100% of committed sources. There may be
Mm-hmm.
sources that you have an idea that you're going to look into in the upcoming future, but you need to show proof and additional information on when you plan to receive those funds. So again, at the time of application, you don't have to show 100% proof of all your funding sources, but there needs to be some detail in the application on how you plan to fund the project, what are your potential sources, as well as what you're asking for as far as the request of funds. Now, the benchmark that I'm referring to as far as the reimbursement process, you can receive up to 90% of funds once completion of improvements and certification from a third party inspector. And then the
Mm.
remaining 10% of funds you'll receive once you receive your use of occupancy permit and then the sale and or occupancy of rental units and proof of income of those home buyers or renters.
Totally understand that. one last piece, but there is no guarantee of the amount that will be awarded because you're asking, let's say for 100K, we may receive 75, or we may be told what you understand what I'm saying? There's no guarantee of that full amount that we're asking for will be awarded. Is that correct?
That is correct. And that's one of the most, and that's a very good question. That's why when we have these presentations, I talk about other funding programs that we have, because we know that and that's with all our programs, we can't 100%, we can't meet 100% of whatever the ask is from our applicants, right? That's
Right.
because a lot of our programs are competitive. So even if, again, if you're awarded and it's a reduced amount compared to what you thought you would possibly receive or asked, then that
Mhm.
you have the opportunity to, of course, fund that gap on your own, but then also the opportunity to look in other DACD programs that may be qualified for your project may be qualified for.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Next person, again, I just want to kind of be conscious of time. It's 6:41, so we have about 19 more minutes for questions. So again, if you have longer questions, feel free to send an email to DACD, to the TIF email address. But again, we're going to try to get through as many questions as we can before the end of this session. Now I'm getting ready to unmute Tiffany Green.
Hi, yes, thank you. I'll make it very quick. So this is an amazing opportunity. And I'm just excited for just the city of Baltimore and what's about to come in the next coming years. So my question to you all is, right, for specifically for legacy residents and emerging developers, is there a set of funding set aside specifically for technical assistance, meaning individuals who may be first time approaching the development process and may not have a clear understanding when it comes to like the construction, when it comes to contracting, when it comes to, just completing a successful project? Is there funding or opportunities available to help those specific individuals who are awarded this opportunity?
So that's a very good question. Unfortunately, through this program, no, there's no funding for TA. But
Okay.
again, one of my recommendations, and again, within our city, again, like I mentioned earlier, we give, we give a lot of opportunities through our grant programs for emerging developers. And one of the recommendations as grant managers and grant directors that we request here is for folks to, maybe want to partner up, not at an actual project, because again, we're not going to connect you with any developers, but just reach out to some of the developers who may receive funds from us. That information is always public, so
Okay.
you can always look at our award list. You may see some names of some folks or groups that receive funding. You may want to reach out to them for
Okay.
additional questions and support and things like that. But unfortunately,
Yeah.
no, we don't have funds for TA at the moment.
Okay.
That's
No
a good
problem.
idea
Well,
though.
I'm a technical assistant provider. So my name is Tiffany Green and I'm the owner of Concrete Support. Putting my little plug in. So if you need
Yeah.
help with submitting your application or even technical assistance, hit me up.
Yeah. If you could put your email in the chat, that'd be great. And then for you all who are on this, you can definitely reach out to Tiffany if there's something that you are interested in. Thank you, Tiffany. Sheila Harrison, you can unmute.
I just have a quick question about the legacy residents. I didn't quite understand the legacy residents because I'm a resident of Baltimore City and I've been here over 20 years. And I just want to know what opportunities do I have in this program as a resident?
Yeah, so again, we have another member from the ACD, Stacy Freed on here who can go into a little bit more detail, but I kind of piggyback on what she may have mentioned earlier. So with the legacy residents, again, those are your folks who, may have a property that's within the family, who wants to, has ownership of a property that is in the family that may have been a vacant property that they want to use these funds to rehab and renovate, to have themselves or another family member to move in to that property. Your question seems to be more geared towards, are you asking for like rehab opportunities for your current
Yes,
residents?
sir. And I do live in a legacy type property. It's been in
Okay.
our family generation after generation. So
Okay.
I just wondering, is this a place where I can apply for a grant to help me out?
Okay. So to help you personally for a home that you already live in,
No,
um,
no, I don't live in the home, but
who do? Go ahead.
okay, the only thing I'm asking is if a person has a home in Baltimore that's been in the family generation after generation, maybe like three, four generations,
Yep.
can they get funds from the city to rehab the house?
Yes,
Even
ma'am.
though, okay, because I just hate to go into a whole lot of details, but the property is still in the estate.
Who has direct ownership? That'd be an important piece. Um,
It's in the estate and it's going to be deeded um to myself. And I just wanted to know if there's anything that I could apply for with
so
the
this,
city to help me out with the rehabilitation of the property because you said legacy residence or
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah,
Okay,
I just want to get to your question because we got a couple more, but most definitely. So yeah, so again, in our NOFO, there's a link to see if that property that you are interested in renovating that's part of your family is actually in
right.
the TIF district. So that'd be the first thing I would recommend you do first before you even complete an application. And if it is in one, it is in the TIF district, the next thing that you need to do, of course, is complete the application. But there's an area of the application with site control, as well as the overall details about the project. So that's where you'll detail, okay, when do you plan to have the project deeded to you completely, and you have sole ownership of it, as well as any documentation to show proof that the property will eventually be deeded over to you. You'll need to upload that information. And once that's reviewed, submitted, and your application is submitted, then our team will review it if it's eligible for these funds.
Thank you for answering my question.
Yep, you're welcome. Dante Garrick. You're unmuted.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So I have a few questions. Good afternoon, everyone. Uh, can only Maryland residents or it's available to anyone for like PA residents?
What type of applicant are you potentially will you potentially be?
Develop. Yeah, like develop, invest
Do
for
you
like
have a
the development?
do you have a business that's in Maryland, the state of Maryland?
No. No. My brother lives in Maryland. He's the person that told us about this. We're just inquiring. Uh,
Okay. So you would need to have a business entity established in the state of Maryland because one of the requirements of the application is to be in good standing in the state of Maryland. Now, for our legacy residents or our then that won't qualify. They will be that's applicable to them. That wouldn't apply to them. Sorry. So for you, in that case, you would need to, if you're from out of state, you would need to have an entity established in the state of Maryland. Need to be in good standing. And then one of the most important pieces of this application is that you need to have site control or whatever property you're interested in using these funds towards, and it must be in the TIF district.
okay, so I should have a business entity and have control of the property that I'm looking to gain funding for, correct?
A business entity in the state of Maryland.
In the state of Maryland, and I should have like the property in order to receive funding, right?
Yeah, that's called site control.
Site
So,
control. Okay.
yeah. So when you look at the application, there will
Gain
be a
acquisition.
section called site control. That's where you'll address your questions related to the ownership of the property.
All right. And you already know where you're going to get the application, right? No. Right. And in regards to the application,
You gotta be quick, sir. We got 10 minutes left.
yeah, the application. How do I apply? I just want to make a note of everything so I have all the important details.
Yeah, absolutely. So on DHCD's website, if you look up Affordable Housing TIF program, there's going to be a web page that comes up with a link to all the information from this information session, FAQs, as well as a link to the application, which is through a software called Neighborly Software. That's not going to be available until Friday, September 19th, where you'll be able to open that up. And it should open up in the morning on Friday. But you do
Okay.
everything online. No application will be submitted in hard copy, all online applications.
Online.
Yep, through Neighborly.
All
All right.
right.
So I gotta move on. Yep.
Great. Thank you for your time.
All right, you're welcome, man. Good luck to you. Wayne Battle.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, hey Wayne.
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
So my situation is somewhat similar to the gentleman before me. So I live out of state. I live in Charlotte,
Okay.
but I'm in the process of purchasing a property that I want to rent in Baltimore City. So when you say with the business entity, does that, like, I sell insurance. So me being licensed in Maryland, does that count as a business entity?
So what I mean a business entity, I mean like this overall like an organization. Now, will you have an LLC here in Maryland? Like who's gonna own the property?
I'm gonna own
Like
the
is it
property.
gonna be under a business name or your individual name?
This individual.
So again, you'll need to provide proof of site control, um, as well as because there's a piece of the application that asks for um being in good standing in the state of Maryland.
Hmm.
So again, for that, um, yeah, I would say yes. You still would need to have yes. That's I'm having a brain fart. So yes, you'll still need to have an entity in the state of Maryland. Now you're saying your insurance company is based out of Maryland?
No, I'm just like licensed to sell insurance in Maryland. Like I'm in, out of state I have an out of state license to sell insurance in Maryland. That does that
Yeah.
count, or would I
No,
have to have like an LLC or something?
that's correct. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. All right, Wanda, Danielle Parrish.
Yes, you got me?
Yep.
Okay. I was asking about the LLC. Can it be new? Like, I have my own LLC, but it's for theater work. Can I use that? And the other question is, my family, we want to get together to buy the property. So do we have to have that LLC by the time we put in the application?
I would say be as detailed as possible in your application as far as the status of that, and as well as your ownership plans. Again, there's a section of the application that where you'll be required to discuss your ownership plans of that property. So you need to provide that information as well in your project schedule. So if you don't have actual site control via ownership, whether or any of the other items that we list as potential site control in the application, then you'll need to provide proof on when you actually have that.
Okay. And as far as the property, do we have to have a specific property in mind already, or can we ask for a range and within a certain amount of time find the property to use the grant?
Well, the application deadline is October 3rd, so be as precise as possible on the property. Again, whatever property or properties that you plan to submit with this application, you'll need to provide that site control proof. Again, that's going to be one of the things that we look at when we're looking at the application. So if there's a planned range, you need to have the information about each individual property. When I mean information, I mean like details in the application on what the property address, as well as the scope, the site control documentation proof that we request.
Okay, so I do have to have something already in mind, as far as the contract almost there, or I can't say, okay, I'm gonna look for a home to fix up. By October 3rd, I gotta figure out which one it is that I want and that it's in that TIF, I mean, in that area.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
You're welcome. Kevin Blackstone, unmute.
Paul,
Yep.
quick question, from the chat that a couple people have. In terms of legacy residence, does the property have to be vacant? There's a few people who wanted to know that. Sorry, Kevin.
That's what I'm gonna text.
I'm gonna mute you, Kevin, real quick. Say that question one more time,
In
Shannon.
terms of legacy residence, does the property have to be vacant? A few people wanted to know that. Does the property have to be vacant for the legacy residents?
It needs to be in the TIF district for sure. Stacy or Wendy, are you available to answer that question?
Oh, hi, give me a second.
Mhm.
So the requirement for all of the properties, regardless of whether you are a developer or a legacy resident, is that the property must be in the TIF district. It must be one of the properties with the little green dot that Paul showed you earlier. All of those properties have a vacant building notice on them. So we cannot use TIF funds for properties that are not included in the citywide TIF district, which is legislation that the Baltimore City Council approved. And we cannot use TIF funds for housing repair or any kind of work on properties that are occupied.
Great, thank you, Stacy. Kevin Blackstone, you can unmute now, sir. Yeah, 4 minutes, folks.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so you had mentioned that the amount of funds that are available are based on the city selling bonds, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so who would the city be selling bonds to? Is this individuals in the state or across the country?
No. So these are high. I'm going to step in again.
Go ahead.
So TIF bonds, these TIF bonds are sold through an underwriter. They are sold to larger institutional investors.
Gotcha. Okay. And your anticipation is that you would receive a significant amount of funds for this, which would then fund this program.
Correct. So this is, we're going to be selling bonds over the course of many years. So this is the first bite at the apple.
Yeah,
This is the first application out the door every year as more properties come online and we generate new tax revenue. We'll be able to use a portion of that new tax revenue to help us sell additional bonds.
Yeah. Now, granted, most of the properties in Baltimore are privately owned, so I know the city doesn't have many properties. So, I would assume that obviously we're going to be targeting the privately owned properties versus small portion of the citywide properties.
Properties in the TIF district include a combination of properties, including those owned by the mayor and city council. Private properties the city is planning to take title to, and privately owned, and privately owned properties. Yes.
Yeah. And do you see a interest from the institutional investors to invest in Baltimore? Because
yes, we do. We have we spent a year kind of talking through this program before we even started putting the program together.
Gotcha. Because I have a number of properties on North Avenue around the Greenmont area, so we're starting those. So this is a perfect opportunity if those properties fall in the TIF.
Yep.
That would be great.
All right.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you, man.
Yep.
Appreciate you. Hope got 1 more minute on my end. Hope Porter, and we got a hard stop at 7. Hope Porter, unmute please. Unmute please. Hope Porter. All right. Sorry, Hope. Maryland Real Estate, unmute please to ask your question.
Yes, how you doing? I'll be quick. Couple of quick questions that I think the group would really benefit from. So the developer fee, how are you guys looking at the developer fee? First question. Second question, with the appraisal gap, are you requiring comps when we submit the application? And then third question, how are you guys coming up with the third-party inspector to inspect and issue the final grant funds?
I was answering the question while you was what's and
Yeah,
again,
first
we go over a
question
minute, so
is
it's
the
fine.
developer fee. The developer fee. How are you guys sizing that developer fee? Is it 10
Yeah,
to 15%? Do you guys want to see on
yeah,
that?
we looked at around 12%, because with our developer incentive program, that's almost, that's sort of similar to this program. It's 12%.
Okay, and so for the appraisal gap, you need to see comps as well, like to see the
Um,
appraisal gap.
not So we didn't request comps in the application. If you want to detail that information about comps and in the community where you're thinking about receiving funds, please add that information. And then most importantly, complete your budget to show exactly what the total budget amount is. And then also in the application, there's a section on what your planned sale price is for the property. So just make sure that you include all that information in your application.
And the third party inspector, is that something that you guys have a list of like certified third party inspector that would come in and review the work
Yes.
completed?
So there's two ways, sir. Hi, there's two ways the third-party inspector could be engaged. If you have a third-party inspector you use, or you have a lender that has a third-party inspector, we can take a look at that person's qualifications, and you would need to execute a separate contract with that inspector specific to the work being funded by the TIF. The second option is DHCD is planning to to procure, make some inspectors available to assist with this effort.
Okay, thank you very much.
Certainly.
All right. So with that, last question, again, that wraps up,
That's all.
tonight's information session. In the chat, I did send a reminder for you all to be able to send additional questions to ahtif@baltimorecity.gov for additional questions throughout this process. So again, thank you all for meeting with us tonight. I know it's a little late. I know it was pretty long presentation, but again, we want to make sure that we provide this additional presentation to ensure that all your questions were answered. So again, this information will be available on DHCD's website from today's session as well as yesterday's session on our website, along with the PowerPoints, the NoFo, and as a reminder, the application opens up on Friday, September 19th via the Neighborly software portal, and no applications will be submitted in hard copy form. Thank you. Have a good evening. And Tammy, please stop the recording. Good night, everyone.